Welcome everyone, welcome to Deadplay. I am Denis Guy-Bélanger, I will be your host as usual. Today we're playing Joust. Originally, so in the past or last episode, I wanted to play Joust 2. I had found an emulated version of it. However, because I am in a center that uses Macs, I cannot use that game, and I'm not equipped to do it at home. Sadly, I'm actually at the Media Production Center at Cotton University where I'm doing my master's, but they only use Macs for this, so I cannot use it whatsoever. I might try to do this in the future if when I continue the project after I graduate, but sadly for now I can't. So we're gonna have to just use this version because that's the only one I found that worked. And because I can also not install everything I want on these computers, I don't want to end up installing bad stuff, spyware, or whatever. I'm going to start playing this version, which is supposedly the shareware game, Joust, the arcade game. So let's just start with this and see what happens. So I played around with it slightly because, like in the past episode, I didn't have a description of what I was supposed to do or what I was supposed to use as keys. In some other versions, actually, there were a lot of description, but they didn't work. I tried several of them. I think this is probably like the 7th I try on this computer and it doesn't work. So I now have everything I need. I'll take 10 lives because 80 sounds a bit excessive. Let's do 30, just because I'm not that good. So that's one of the interesting things with these games is that actually some of these emulated versions, you can actually have hacks already in them. God, this goes fast. So yeah, you can have these hacks already in them, so you can choose the number of lives. Some games it's unlimited lives. Some games it's literally you can't die. Other, various amount different things. But that will, of course, alter slightly how you experience the game. And now I died, of course. This is actually quite hard. This is not good. I can't wait to actually play the quote-unquote real version of Joust, because I am going to the Museum of Play, Strong Museum of Play, that is in a couple weeks. I mentioned in the other video. This will be released probably a couple months after I've been there. So yeah, I don't have all the info yet, though in the podcast it will be attached to this project. You most likely will be able to see or experience all of this all of what I've done for the project in its entirety, rather than having this kind of weird time frame where I have done stuff, and if you're watching this after you've listened to the podcast, then it might be slightly confusing. In any case, I am recording this as I am conducting research, and I'm not done my project whatsoever. Pretty advanced, but not that much. In any case, let's talk about the game. I played the Atari 2600 version at Ludov, which is the Video Game Studies Center at the University of Montreal, and also the 7800 version of this game. I gotta say, controls are slightly better on this, I feel, but it might just be me, and because of my not experience, but just because of who I am and how old I am. So I never experienced Joust. I've never had even heard of that game before I started doing research on video games, and so eventually I learned of it, I think, by reading Ready Player One, and probably just talking about old games with people who do study video games, especially video games preservation at the Canada Science and Tech Museum. In any case, I did not know about this game at all, and now I actually have the opportunity to try it under, in different conditions, different versions of it, would it be authorized or unauthorized or emulated versions, which are clearly not going to be the exact same thing. But I think what strikes me the most, are the controls, because when I tried it on the Atari, the control was quite literally a joystick. So these joysticks were interesting because it was very obvious that Atari was trying to create an arcade experience again. I mean, if you're familiar with Atari, you probably know the classic controller, which quite literally looks like an arcade controller, with the joystick and a button. What is particularly interesting, though, in this one is that I'm using a keyboard to play, though I could probably plug one into it, which would most likely give a much more accurate experience compared to the one I had, or sorry, to the one I'm having right now. Now, of course, I was playing with, what was it, 30 lives or whatever. That is not an accurate experience whatsoever. The one I did play on the Atari or on the Ataris, I should say, since I played two versions, I think I had 4 lives. Oh god, it was hard. I'm not that great at these games particularly, but just at video games more generally. I mean, I enjoy them very, very much, but I'm not that good at them, I feel. Depends on the game, I guess. And also, being someone who's slightly younger than a lot of people who will have experienced that game, I do not have the same skills with these type of controls. If I had an Atari 2600 at home when I was a kid, and I played it a lot, most likely I would be much, much, much better at this game when I tried it. And I really keep dying. I'm quite bad at it. The only advantage, though, of having so many lives and having these kind of hacks in it is that if you are a scholar studying these games and you're not that good, you might be able to make it to the very end because of these cheats. Now, that is actually a serious advantage when you think about it, especially when you're studying video games and you can't. I mean, you don't necessarily want to spend months on one game and develop these skills just to be able to play it. Seems like slight overkill, at least to me. Now, would that be the most authentic experience of actually doing all of this? Sure, but I mean, we only have limited resources and a limited amount of time, so to be quite honest, I think it's a good thing that we're not necessarily we're not necessarily wanting to do this, to be honest. I mean, I'm only doing this for my master's, so I don't have so much time. I have some. I had a couple months, but I also had to do all the writing, all the editing for all of this. I mean, this ended up being quite an endeavor, much more than I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, quite honestly, because of these kind of hacks or whatever, even though you might not have the most authentic experience, which in my podcast I actually kind of, I disagree with this idea of having a authentic experience, and I think that's highly subjective and also highly problematic in some sense, because you're never going to be able to do that. I mean, you could literally do everything and not still have that authentic experience, because realistically, are we going to build an arcade and have kids in it again? Are we going to recreate the entirety of the arcade? Most likely not. That does not make sense, at least in terms of purely in a sense of time and resources, even though we might want to, and that would be the ideal situation. we're just not going to be able to. So we have to be realistic in what we're doing. That pterodactyl is really annoying me right now. In any case, this is actually quite good. I kept seeing slight bugs here and there where the eggs, for instance, would change form, but they still kind of work. And I'm just realizing that I did not put this in full screen. So I will give you a better experience and a better vision of it. And actually that fits kind of better, because if you were playing even on TV, you would most likely have a bigger screen than what I had there. Maybe not as big as this one I have right now. This is quite a large screen. To be honest, I do not know the size of it, but it's probably like a 26-inch screen. And so 26 screens, of course, at the time might not have been the norm. I don't know. And especially it wouldn't have been widescreen. It would have been more of a square. So, of course, everything I'm doing here is slightly different from a quote-unquote authentic experience. But you know what? I'm playing an emulator. It's not supposed to be, or it can't be. Even though you want it to, you're probably not going to be able to. These controls are actually quite fast. I've heard from someone who played the game on the arcade that the controls were incredibly sensitive, and this kind of feels very sensitive too. So maybe that's something that's well done. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Of course, a joystick and only playing with two keys. In this case, it's Z and X. Not the same thing than a joystick whatsoever. So probably the Atari 2600 and 7800 experiences are closer to what you would find in an arcade, but it's still not the best. Especially because I felt when I was playing on the 2600 and 7800, one of the issues I've had was that I was not holding, no, the game is over, initials. Well, you know what? Here we are. That is me. Well, I'm the first and only one. Let's keep playing. This was pretty good, actually. Yeah, start game 3. Why not? There's no sound either, which is really, really interesting, kind of eerie in a sense. Or did the sound just stop? The sound stopped in the simulated version. Oh, now that's very interesting. But that's one of the issues, actually, you'll have with these emulated versions. They're not perfect, as I've been saying for the whole time. However, what is particularly interesting is that, oh, god damn it, is that sometimes, quite literally, the sound will just not work, or won't be in tune, it won't be, how could I say this? It's not going to be timed properly, it's going to be delay with sound, and stuff like that. So, all of these issues kind of affect how you're going to experience the game, and sometimes the sound, for instance, is very, very important in how you're going to experiment the game, because you have these audio cues that you need to be able to experience the game and just enjoy the game, because audio cues are part of it. So I didn't have any sound, which is very, very interesting. I could have mentioned that just in some of the writing, or some of the reading, that I've been doing. But I felt that I had to play these games and experience it for myself, record it for myself, to actually give an accurate depiction of the amount of work and just what you can do. Let's Plays are something that are very interesting, or kind of a novel idea when it comes to studying video games. I mean, we've been seeing it as a form of entertainment for a while now. They're very, very big. They're probably some of the biggest YouTube channels out there. But still, this is one. Woo! Still, this is quite interesting, because it's actually letting me show you what I mean, and as it relates to my project, and not necessarily just being this kind of secondhand comment of like, well, this other person has done it and had issues with it. Well, now I have had some of these issues firsthand, and oh, please don't. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, that's one of the issues with emulation, even though I would argue that it's most likely where video game preservation is going towards. Even when I'm still flashing, okay. Even though I think that it's where video game preservation is going, I do still think that it has its issues. It's all great. It's amazing to be able to play these games on other platforms, especially as platforms are dying. But you know what? It's not perfect, and we have to keep that in mind. Woo. Boop, boop. I like doing these small sounds. That's one of the things actually that I feel like if you're not playing the game and not recording these games appropriately at the very least, you're not going to no, you're not going to have that. I'm someone who's kind of very reactive when I'm playing. Mario Kart and Super Smash were the games that I played with all my friends when I was a kid. I still do. And honestly, I think one of the fun part about playing these games with my friends is me just screaming because I don't want to die and I don't want to fall and all of that stuff. Which is probably one of the reasons why if I had played Dark Souls and recorded it, it might have been a minor success. In any case, that's one of the things you're not going to be able to keep if you only have an emulation and don't have someone playing it, because you won't know how the person experienced it, and that's all. It's all what it is. Video games are supposed to be played. It's like if I don't know. One of the best examples I think is, what if you had access to like hockey, but we're not allowed to play it, and like, what worth would it be? Like, how much would that be worth? I think it wouldn't be worth much. I think that's one of the cool things about these interactions, or these interactive, mediums, would it be sports or video games, is that there is this interaction, this human machine interaction, which I'm actually not really recording right now, simply because of limitations. I do not have another camera to be able to record how I'm playing. So you guys see my face right now. I can look at the camera, and try to give a good impression of how I'm reacting and how my facial reactions or my expressions, and that's all well and good. However, you're not seeing what I'm doing on the keyboard, and that would be maybe a bit more relevant if I was playing an original version on the Atari, for instance, or on the arcade machine, because that's a totally different experience. And why is nothing happening? Did I find a bug? No, it's a pterodactyl. No! Fuck! As I've said before, this is not a family show. I will swear, because that's just the way I play. When I play video games, I swear. Because I'm not happy, and because that's just the way I speak. I sincerely apologize, but it's fine. I'm not planning on making any money from this, and therefore, what the hell? Why couldn't I see that egg? I could not see that egg. That was another bug, I feel. Unless that was in the original game. I'll know more about this later. But yes, as I said, I'm not planning on making any money from this, and so I can pretty much do what I want in terms of language and format and all of it. This is like my third time I'm doing these, and I feel I'm becoming more and more comfortable to be able to play and talk at the same time. That is very encouraging. I'm also kind of recording my whole process while doing this, and just the experiment of doing all of this. You can find probably videos and guides and stuff like that for Let's Plays and all of these all over the internet, and of course on YouTube, but I still feel I'm coming from a different perspective because I'm taking this from a scholarly approach, an academic approach. And now there is someone else who I forget the name right now and will be in the podcast. So if you're listening to this or watching this after the podcast, you'll already know who I'm talking about because I will have figured out their name. But if you're not, I suggest taking a look at the podcast to be able to know who I'm talking about. But talking about how we should be doing this research, even in terms of content analysis. So, if you're playing, I don't know, some of the Telltale games, like the Walking Dead series or whatever, where you're taking decisions and you have to take hard decisions. Now that's very, very interesting because you really want to be analyzing what you're doing at the same time, and you're kind of recording your thoughts as you're playing and not necessarily in retrospect. So you might have a more, I don't want to say visceral, but I guess authentic? I don't know. Just more in the moment, which I think is very important when we're talking about some of these. Sometimes you're just not going to react the same way, and like your memories of something might impact how you remember it. So yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I think it's the good tactic to use, especially when it comes to being able to analyze what you have done kind of afterwards, because you can revisit it and rewatch it, because replaying the game will not be the same experience. You know what's coming. It's really not the same thing. It's like replaying one of your childhood games. You might have forgotten stuff, but you might also now just be a better player. Things will be different. You won't really remember precisely how it was. It's one of these things that's kind of hard to gauge and is also very subjective. So yeah, sorry if this is very rambly, but it's just kind of recording my thoughts at the same time as I'm playing this game. But this is very interesting because of these 80 lives, I can actually now experience the game much more than I was able to when I played it in the original version. I'm still limited in time because this center closes in a couple hours, maybe an hour or something. So I will have to stop eventually. That's really interesting. And that's one of the things with Joust. So Joust is an iconic game. It survives through a lot of other mediums. It survives through the simulation, a variety of releases, and also through Ready Player One, for instance, which was a book, but now is becoming a movie, and so we're probably going to have a representation of Joust in there. Now, how people interpret it and show it might be slightly different from a quote-unquote authentic, real experience. But still, it is one of its interpretations, and you could see how you could see just how they're thinking about it, and you can just hope that they do a good job. Maybe they will, maybe not. I don't know. I usually have an opinion about adaptations. I think they're usually quite bad in most cases. It's not always the case. Some of them are great, but it's always an interpretation. It's also it's someone else's ideas on something, and so they did not necessarily experience it firsthand, and that kind of will influence a lot of this. But everything that we do is kind of like that anyway. So just my take on all of this is my own. You big meanie. I am sincerely trying to control myself, even though I probably should. I just don't want to transform this into a swear fest where I get really annoyed. Are you? And this game is really hard. Aww. God. You little... Come on. Okay. I made it. I think. No! I don't know how many waves are supposed to be. I know, like, the max number of points is, like, I don't know, 9 million or something? I don't know how many it is. But a lot. There's a Guinness World Record for this. That's also one of the things that's really interesting about this game, is that there were competitive, there were competitions. Also, people played with 2 players, which is not something I'm doing right now. And so my experience of the game, are you serious? My experience of the game is one of a single-player experience, but some people will have been playing competitively or will have been playing with another player. I mean, both competing against each other, but also maybe playing cooperatively too. So, I don't know. It's just interesting thoughts. The graphics actually on this version is quite interesting. I remember the first version I tried on the Atari 2600 was quite poor. It was just kind of an orange thing that could maybe look like a bird, I think. It was quite poor. It was not the same thing. Really not the same thing. Quite different. No. But then the 7800 version, though, you can notice that it was an ostrich that you were riding. And that's one of the interesting things about this. I mean, originally what I thought of doing with this game was taking the idea that, like, well, originally the game, and for those who don't know, I'll just be telling you right now, originally the creators of the game wanted the knight to be riding on an eagle. However, when they started producing the game, kind of realized that was not as logical, and they thought an ostrich was more, not necessarily accurate, but more believable. I mean, riding an ostrich is already a thing, so I could see that. I could see how you'd have like a kind of jousting on an ostrich, that would work. But on an eagle, you'd have like a gigantic eagle that could also walk on the ground while having a knight on its back. It's just not as logical, and I totally get it. It totally makes sense. But originally what I thought was, oh, maybe I'll just analyze the game and say, well, originally the creators wanted to have an eagle, and the eagle has a particular symbolism in many cultures, and in the United States, because this is an American game, of course, bald eagle and stuff like that. However, I soon realized that I most likely would not be able to do this with this game. Mostly because how can I do this except by an analysis of content? And it did not suit what I was doing so well, especially if I wanted to do a more of a let's play thing. At least in this instance, it was not going to work as well. In any case, I think I've been playing this game for way too long, and I've been blabbering a lot. I'll just leave it at this. It's a different experience, clearly, and I can't wait to try other versions to see how every version will be different. But yeah, no, this is quite good. I mean, we have versions on emulation that work. Several of them do not work, or at least don't work properly, and so I'm just going to leave it here. I'll just thank you very much for joining me again. There will be more of these when they'll be coming. This is a very good question because I have to finish my my work and all my course load for this. Yeah, let's. I'll just say till next time, but I don't know when that's going to be precisely. Hope this works out.